Hello and welcome back to the AI with Maribel Lopez podcast. I'm Maribel Lopez. So we've been talking a lot in the past week about SaaSpocolypse, maybe a past week and a half. And last week I posted a LinkedIn newsletter about this. So I just want to start by saying, let's call it SaaS isn't dead. But the dead narrative we're hearing, I think, is really leading the enterprise buyers I speak with astray. So, okay, SaaS is dead. I've been reading that headline for a while now, and I want to address it directly because it's generating real confusion for enterprise buyers that are trying to make actual procurement decisions right now. So here's my take. There are two legitimate arguments behind this narrative. Both are worth understanding, but neither leads to the conclusion that it suggests. So if you let the dead framing drive your technology decisions, you'll be making mistakes that are fairly expensive to unwind. So I'm going to walk you through both of the arguments and tell you where I think the real disruption actually lives and give you two questions that matter more than SaaS is dead. So let's just jump right into it. Okay, the first, there's an AI coding tools argument. And the argument goes something like this. Tools like Claude Code and OpenAI's Codex make it so fast and so easy to build custom applications that enterprise buyers no longer need to buy SaaS. So why pay for Salesforce when you can just build your own CRM? And I understand why this argument gets traction. These AI coding tools are genuinely impressive. They compress development timelines. They lower the skill floor for building functional software. 2 years ago, the idea of a mid-sized company building a working application internally in a fraction of the time it used to take, that wasn't realistic. Now it actually is. But here's where the argument falls apart. Enterprise development teams are constrained resource no matter what size company you are, even with AI assistance. The question is not whether or not AI coding tools can build a CRM or an ERP. The question is whether that's the right use of the capacity that you have. And it isn't. AI coding tools are most valuable when enterprises use them to build software that reflects their unique competitive advantage. And the workflow that most SaaS vendors have, something you want to build something that isn't in a traditional SaaS that's really going to differentiate business. The integration marketplace, unique connectors, the process should be specific to how your business operates. So that's where custom development, I think, earns its place. Rebuilding Salesforce from scratch isn't a competitive advantage. In fact, I would argue it's a distraction. The total cost of ownership math changes dramatically when you look past the initial build. And AI generated apps still need hosting, monitoring, security reviews, compliance certifications, identity and access management, documentation, and someone has to own it, particularly when the original owner builder leaves. Okay, maybe we get to a point where you can automate a lot of that with AI, but we're not there yet. So SaaS vendors handle a lot of those ugly, uninteresting things like, SOC compliance, HIPAA, FedRAMP, disaster recovery, data backups. That's just the baseline, right? So custom built apps start at zero on all of that. And the investment required to close that gap rarely gets budgeted up front. So we've seen this happen. We've had a lot of shadow IT over the course of the years, and it does cost enterprises a significant amount of money. So consider something like Workday. It connects to benefits providers, payroll tax engines, 401k platforms, dozens of companies, country-specific labor law systems. The ecosystem of certified connectors wasn't built in a sprint. So what we see is AI coding tools are an accelerant for building differentiated software. They're not a procurement strategy for replacing mature systems of record. The second thing I want to talk about is the AI agent argument and why this deserves more respect. The second argument is where the disruption lives, and I want to spend more time here because investors are not wrong to pay attention to it. The argument is this: if AI agents can sit on top of SaaS platforms and complete workflows end to end, pulling data, making decisions, triggering actions, how many human seats does that replace? And if SaaS pricing is per seat, what happens to revenue when agents are doing this work? There's just a lot of questions about where the value is going to live moving forward. What are you going to pay for? Are you going to be paying for AI agents? Are you going to be paying for SaaS? Are you going to pay for SaaS and you pay less for it, and then you pay more for the agent? So that's not really a hypothetical question. That's a real question that we're dealing with. And we see that agentic AI doesn't replace SaaS, but it consumes it. And the agent completing the expense report probably still writes to an ERP, and an agent solving a customer service issue still reads and updates the CRM. So we see all that, but agents are going to be sitting at a layer on top of existing systems. They're not a replacement for them, but it really brings into question, do we have the similar per seat pricing model, or is it under genuine pressure? Is it for certain use cases? So that vendors that we see that don't adapt to this quickly will feel it. And that's some of the SaaS apocalypse that we saw happening in the market. So the interesting data point is what's happening with vendors that are moving. So I was reading a Cafe Capital piece around this, and they brought up a really interesting point. They were talking about how Salesforce is generating 540 million in ARR from Agentforce. They mentioned a company, Intercom, that's crossed over 200 million in ARR, mostly from doing an AI first pivot. So what we can see is that customers will pay for agentic capabilities layered on top of platforms and on top of platforms they already trust. So these aren't really experiments. We're starting to see this actually happening. So the commodity end of the software market, they have a harder problem, right? Applications that do one thing, uh, they don't have deep data modes. Maybe they're not the best in compliance breadth. There are applications that are generally at risk, but your systems of record and engagement are probably not the first ones that we'll see have this issue. So if your product can be rebuilt with a prompt, then that's a market value problem, and AI will most likely replace that. But for vendors with strong systems of record, the disruption of pricing models is a concern, but could be manageable, right? And it's only manageable though if everybody moves with urgency and really creates the things that enterprise buyers need. So think about what happens when an ERP like SAP doesn't just record transactions, but they proactively optimize procurement, or when a contact center platform like NICE or Five9 identify a churn risk before the human rep notices the signals. That's not the death of SaaS. That's SaaS becoming substantially more valuable. So the vendors that figure this out will define the next era of enterprise software. And the ones waiting will find that that window is closing much faster than it did during, say, the on-premise to cloud transition. So what would actually have to change? I just want to be specific about this because I think it's important for buyers to understand what conditions would have to be true for SaaS to decline significantly. And most of them are not here yet. So AI generated code would have to become reliably maintainable, just not generatable. We can build fast today, but maintaining, debugging, and evolving complex systems at scale is a different problem. Compliance is another issue. We have to make sure that everything can be easily and readily compliant, and that that compliance can be provisioned in minutes because, or even seconds, because we're now talking about perhaps even ephemeral agents that are dealing with this. So we're not quite there yet. Integration would be another challenge. We agents need to be able to dynamically negotiate APIs, handle schema changes, all of these things without pre-built connectors that are coming from SaaS, right? So that integration advantage is still a challenge. So we're seeing that there's another challenge, and that's a liability model. So you go off and you build AI software. Right now, if something goes wrong, usually the issue goes up to your SaaS provider to accept the legal responsibility if you've done everything you can do. In a custom built world, it's the enterprise that built it. And we saw this actually happen with one of the large airlines that their agent gave a discount or said there would be a discount that didn't exist, and they still had to give that discount. So, because they're responsible for their AI agents. So, most enterprises aren't ready for that kind of exposure yet. So, when these conditions are met, and eventually some of them will be met, I'm not saying they won't, the procurement calculus will shift. But until then, I think that that narrative is still ahead of the evidence. So I think if you are enterprise buyers out looking for software, two questions matter more than whether or not SaaS is dead. First, what should your development team actually be building? AI coding tools unlock real capacity. Point that capacity at your competitive differentiation, the workflows, the integration, and the processes that are specific to how your business operates. So don't spend it on building what SaaS vendors have already built and will maintain for quite some time. The second is which of your SaaS vendors are building seriously for an agentic world, and which ones are bolting on a chatbot to a legacy interface? Who's trying to rebuild, AI native systems? So what can they show you in production today? Not a roadmap, not a demo, production. Then I think the third thing is we are looking to try to figure out what the new pricing models look like. Is it going to be a per seat model? Is it going to be an outcome-based model? Is it going to be something else? I think that's yet to be determined. And I've seen many runs at the outcome-based model, and I will tell you it's hard. So let's see what happens there. But I think you can look at what we've seen in the past and say that the disruptive narrative of this is dead or that's dead is not really the point. So push your vendors to show you their production ready AI that solves a real business problem. And that's the right test. So I want to thank you for listening. I thank you for all of you that have helped with research over time. Please subscribe and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.